The Colts are casting a wide net, and so are we today on Locked On Colts as we dive into who might be the best head coaching candidates for the team when the offseason begins. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am Jake Arthur, joined as always by Zach Hicks, and you know the two of us from horseshoehuddle.com. Today, Zach delivered us yet another banger over at horseshoehuddle.com recently. This one is about some of the top head coaching candidates that could become available for the Colts when the season begins. You know, Jeff Saturday's interim tag will run out, a search will be conducted, and we'll find out who the new head coach will be. Should they go for an offensive-minded head coach, a player's coach type, maybe someone steady and stoic? Zach has options for pretty much all of that. So we're going to start first with some dark horse candidates because shortly before we came on here, Jeff Saturday was speaking, or not Jeff Saturday, owner Jim Irsay was speaking at the NFL owners meetings, and he basically said they're going to cast this wide net for the search for the coach. Look in the league, look at college coaches, look at outsiders. They're going to look at everybody. So we decided why not start with our dark horse candidates. First, we wanted to mention, though, if you read Zach's piece already, we're going to exclude a couple people who just seem super unlikely. Eagles offensive coordinator Shane Steichen, of course, him working for Nick Sirianni. Sirianni be beefing with the Colts a little bit after the Frank Reich stuff.
That definitely doesn't seem very likely right there.
No.
And Shane Steichen also worked with Frank Reich and with the Chargers as well. So if he's sharing those same sentiments as Nick Sirianni, I highly, highly doubt he would want to work for Jim Irsay. Steichen's going to be probably the number one offensive coordinator candidate on the market this offseason. So, that's a top candidate right there that I just don't see coming to Indy at all.
Colts obviously need offensive help, so that is a bummer if that's not even an option for them. The other one, and it's the name that's most often said by fans with literally every team that needs a coach, Sean Payton. It ain't happening. Number one, the Saints still own his rights, so it would require a trade or some sort of massive buyout, whatever. And the Colts aren't the type of team he's going to want to come to. They don't have an established quarterback. It's, the ownership has been meddling a little bit lately, so it's just not a super attractive destination for someone who has the pick of the litter, essentially.
Yeah, he'll have the option to go coach Justin Herbert if they miss the playoffs this offseason. Right. And if not, maybe he can go coach Kyler Murray in Arizona. I don't know why he would pick Nick Foles with Indy or Matt Ryan in Indy. He's going to be able to pick whatever quarterback he wants if the team is willing to trade a pick for him because, again, the Saints own his rights. I do think he's going to be coaching next year. I just don't think Indy's one of those logical destinations for him.
Yeah, Sean, go get you a social media quarterback, baby. Go do your thing.
Oh, yeah, go do your thing.
Well, that's a whole nother podcast. We'll just do a whole podcast on Emmanuel Acho at some point.
Yes.
So, first up on the list, we have talked about this guy a bit already, but that's Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh. Now, we've kind of got some interesting perspective and a new kind of look at this now after Irsay spoke at the owners' meetings. What do you think?
Yeah, no, Jim Irsay was basically like, oh, yeah, we're going to cast this wide net that includes college coaches. And it's going to be a wide net. There'll be some dark horses, like college coaches. And we like some of the talent at the college level. I think there's some good coaches at the college level. It's like, okay, we get it. You're going to look at college coaches. And if you look at the college coaches available, I'm not going to go too in depth here on Jim Harbaugh because we did that a couple weeks ago on a podcast. But I don't see any other real college coach you're looking at besides Harbaugh. I mean, all the up-and-comer guys just got giant contracts. I mean, Lincoln Riley just went out to USC. It would take a lot to take him away from there. Luke Fickell just got the Wisconsin job. It would take a lot to take him away. Kirby Smart is running that Georgia program really well. I don't see him leaving. So honestly, like outside of maybe like Ryan Day from Ohio State, but I mean, I know a lot of you guys who are listening are Ohio State fans. I can't imagine you guys would be thrilled with Ryan Day coming here to.
No, he follows you to your pro fandom.
Yeah. I doubt that you guys would be into that. So really, when Jim Irsay, to me, just reading between the lines, not anything insider here, when he kept mentioning college coaches with that comment that was put out in that article by Pro Football Talk, I was like, I mean, that's basically just him saying that he's going to go all in for Jim Harbaugh. I don't know if it's going to work. Jim Harbaugh has said that he will be returning to the Michigan Wolverines next year. So it did seem like that's, something that's not going to happen, but who knows? Who knows what Jim Irsay is going to offer, or how he's going to get him here, if he's going to try. But I do think he's going to make a pretty good push to bring Jim Harbaugh to the Colts. And I would say that's going to be his dream pick right there. That's going to be Jim Irsay's dream pick this offseason. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I do think, again, if you look at all of the stuff he said down there at those owner meetings, it's pretty clear he's saying, I want to go get Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it, and I would not be surprised in the least if that's target number one. Moving on from him, though, is another former Colts and Lions head coach, Jim Caldwell. Now, he did get a bad rap from his time here because at the end of it, he got handed that 2011 Peyton Manning season where he was out the whole year. Kerry Collins, Curtis Painter, Dan Orlovsky. And things did start, like, that season wasn't it was a huge outlier in general, but things had started to go downhill a little bit before then. A lot of those stars were getting older, Freeney, Clark, Mathis, those guys. And Peyton was probably starting to take a tiny step back as well. I think he just happened to be the head coach at the time where things started to go downhill. It wasn't necessarily his fault. He was the most accomplished head coach the Lions have had in forever. I don't know. It's been a very long time though. But what does make him a good candidate?
Yeah, so if it were me personally, again, I think this roster is a bit far away from being that Super Bowl team where the Colts want them to be at. So I personally would not go the Jim Caldwell route just because, again, I don't think they're ready for a guy like that. Like, I think they need to go a little young. They need to reset a little bit. But if Jim Irsay is still thinking, I want to win now, I want to, push all my chips back in and stuff like that, Jim Caldwell is a culture changer. He's a guy who comes in and he gets you above average. He gets you into the playoff hunt every single year. I mean, again, 2011 was the one outlier in his entire career as a coach. I mean, the Detroit Lions had made the playoffs, I think, 3 times since the 90s. And he was the head coach for 2 of those seasons. And he did that in 3 years. He's the only Lions coach with above 500 record in the 2000s. He did a lot with that team. He has been getting interviews in recent seasons. I know that he was like one of the finalists for the Jaguars job last year. So he is trying to get back into head coaching from all accounts there. Again, I don't know if he really fits this Colts team that probably needs a little bit of a reset, but if Jim Irsay wants to win, I think, if you want to be back in that playoff picture immediately, Jim Caldwell is probably the way to go.
Yeah, I think if you're a former Colts person with any ties to Tony Dungy or Peyton Manning or anyone, you're probably in the running at this point. Another guy that you had on your list who, honestly, I think it's weird because his trajectory was going really high up when he was with the Eagles, and it's really kind of slowed down as of late. But Deuce Staley, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've seen so many Colts fans and just people saying like, oh, they're tired of the Frank Reich or even the Jim Caldwell. They're tired of that stoic sideline presence that has no emotion. They want the motivator, they want the crazy guy. Well, with Deuce Staley, the assistant head coach for the Lions / running backs coach, you basically are getting a Dan Campbell type guy. You're getting that energetic, crazy football guy type, and also someone who's been really key in drawing up one of the most fascinating run games in all of football. I mean, they're a top 10 rushing team in football with a pure pocket passer that's not threatening you with his legs. He's not going to, dictate space because Jared Goff is this terrifying running quarterback. They're doing that purely just by running a lot of counter and power and just a lot of really unique looks in the running game. So Staley, I think, is an offensive mind. I think there's something there. And again, he's that motivator guy that you guys all want. And one more candidate I will say here, because I know we got to get to our next section, is dark horse. I don't know if you would call him dark horse, but Pro Football Talk mentioned it in his speculation article. Again, pure speculation, but we have to think that Jeff Saturday's the favorite still. I mean, just because of everything we've seen with Jim Irsay of late, with other teams being upset and stuff like that about how all that went down. Like, who knows if Saturday is going to be their best option or their only option this offseason. So we could be doing all this and all these guys are feeling like, no, I'm not touching that situation. So who knows? Maybe Jeff Saturday wins these last 4 games and Jim Irsay thinks the Super Bowl is coming next season. We really can't see the future, but I do think Jeff Saturday has a real shot. Even if they lose these next 4 games by 50 points each, I think Jeff Saturday's still going to get a good shot because Jim Irsay loves him. And I know a lot of you guys are still fans of Jeff Saturday, even though his interim head coach tenure has not been going very well whatsoever lately. I do think, I do like Jeff Saturday. I want him involved in the organization in some way, and I do think he's going to get a real shot at the head coach there. But coming up, guys, we're going to talk about some offensive candidates, some guys who, the NFL is moving towards these offensive head coaches, and they're finding a lot of success. So we're going to talk about some of them coming up. But first, this episode is sponsored by Tommy John. Don't make your loved ones face the dead of winter in old T-shirts, ancient underwear, and ratty sweats. Help them fight the cold with cozy. Give the gift of Tommy John. In Tommy John, you're much more comfortable, so you can do everything better. Shop Tommy John's Wrap It Up sale right now and give the gift of comfort to everyone on your list, including yourself, with new Tommy John underwear, loungewear, and pajamas. With over 18 million pairs sold, giving Tommy John has become a holiday tradition. 97% of women and men love getting a gift from Tommy John. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics. Since I work from home, for 2 of my 3 jobs, I'm almost living in sweats all the time. So Tommy John sweats are awesome. It's comfy. I have a million sweatpants, so you guys know this is just great for me. Every gift is backed by Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. Hurry to Tommy John's Wrap It Up sale and get 30% off everything, plus free shipping at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. Order now so your gifts arrive before the holidays. 30% off plus free shipping at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. TommyJohn.com/lockedon. See the site for details. All right, so jumping into our next segment, we're going to talk about some offensive-minded head coaches. Again, this is the trend we're seeing with a lot of successful head coaches in recent seasons. I mean, if you look out with Minnesota, what the heck is that guy's name? I think it's Kevin O'Connell, I think is who they hired this offseason.
Yeah,
and they're
head coach.
And they're sitting at 10-3. Nick Sirianni with the Eagles are the best record in the NFC. I mean, we are seeing a lot of these offensive head coaches have the success, because they're bringing this in-depth game plan and then they're bringing some good assistants with them. So I do think this is the way to go. And man, the number 1 guy is Ben Johnson from the Lions. I know we just talked a little Lions with that run game, but again, this passing game with Detroit, I mean, this is a top, fringe top 5 offense in the league with Jared Goff at quarterback, with Jamal Williams as their lead rusher, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's a good receiver. I'm not trying to slight him in any way. But these are not like superstar guys. Like, these are not elite players. And, they're making a push for the playoffs right now with a fringe top 5 offense with those guys. I think Ben Johnson, right up there with Shane Steichen, is going to be the top option for offensive guys this offseason.
I was going to make that exact same argument. It's fascinating what they're doing there in Detroit on offense. Basically, it's just like give them a solid offensive line and they'll figure everything else out because that line is pretty good. They have every reason to be bad with Jared Goff at quarterback. By all assumptions, he was a throwaway by the Rams in that deal. And he's come out and just been really good. I mean, the Colts would be lucky to have Jared Goff this year at quarterback.
Okay, calm down. Don't say that. Chris Ballard will
hold on. That's true. I did see a joke about that thing.
You stop it. I think I made that joke. You chill. You relax. Don't
now. Okay.
In his head.
Disclaimer: Jared Goff would not flourish under the same circumstances with the Colts. Like that's no. But anyway, like you said, Amon-Ra St. Brown is like a pretty good receiver. They traded away T.J. Hawkinson. Josh Reynolds has been productive. DJ Chark is coming on a little bit lately. DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams are being used like perfectly, it seems like, in the roles that you would think they should have. And a lot of that is coaching. Like the coaching and the talent is just working so well together, and it makes you think these guys know how to use the players that they have, which can't have always been said for the Colts. So I'm intrigued by that one for sure.
Yeah, I think the only downside is he's a younger coach. I think he's only in his 30s, like late 30s, maybe early 40s there. So, there might be some fear of like, oh, is this like a 1 year like flash in the pan type thing with him? So there might be some fears there. But I think honestly, if he goes into these meetings with everything kind of ready on who he's going to bring and stuff like that, I mean, he's gonna wow some of these GMs and such. But some other names to look at here, I'm going to rattle off a couple and then we'll talk about them. Kellen Moore from the Cowboys, offense coordinator with the Cowboys. In the games where Dak Prescott has been active and playing, that offense has been just bludgeoning teams. I mean, we saw them bludgeon the Vikings for 40 points, the Colts obviously for a 50 burger, even though again,
you guys remember that one, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, the Colts offense kind of helped them out a little bit in that one, but they did some good things there. I think they're averaging like over 35 points a game though since Dak Prescott's come back, which is insane in today's NFL with how defenses are playing. So I think Kellen Moore is a really interesting, fascinating one that will probably get some interviews this offseason. Mike Kafka with the Giants is another one that's pretty interesting because, again, their offense is kind of average, below average this season. It's nothing special. But if you look at everything that they were last year, in 2021, this was the second worst offense in football, only behind the Houston Texans. Like they were like second to worst in like explosive play percentage. They were second to worst in like passing yards and passing yards per game. This year they're like 18th in both of those. They're like 18th, 19th in those. So just having that big of a jump up and making Daniel Jones not look like a bust, I think it is very impressive. And then another guy who's doing some great work with a former, bust at quarterback, Shane Waldron with the Seahawks. I mean, if we look at the context of what Russell Wilson looks like this year, what he did with Russell Wilson last year is impressive. And then now looking at what Geno Smith, Geno Smith's a Pro Bowl quarterback this season. Like he is almost like undisputably a Pro Bowl quarterback in the NFC. He might be the best quarterback in the NFC this season besides Jalen Hurts. And I think Shane Waldron has a lot to do with that. He's a guy who's worked under Sean McVay, who has that kind of experience with some of the top innovative minds. And then when he went to Seattle, again, he helped Geno Smith get to where he is. So, yeah, I think those are some really interesting offensive names there. I know there's a couple others across the league, but those are the guys I'm really looking at. Are there any of those three that kind of intrigue you the most, Jake?
Yeah, so Kellen Moore has always kind of been on the list, but honestly, I think it's Shane Waldron. Like, you lose a Russell Wilson, who, of course, Russell Wilson looks not great now, but you lose a Russell Wilson, and your offense is just humming with Geno Smith, who we're nearing 10 years in the league or something like that, and he's just now having like a breakout. And, the running game always seems to be working pretty well no matter who is back there. The wide receivers, like, tight ends, they seem to be able to use lots of guys. It feels like a Ben Johnson type of thing to me, honestly. Like it pretty reminiscent. You're a quarterback who everyone's just like, meh. And then you have just a cast of characters and you're getting the most out of these guys. And I definitely Waldron is the one that intrigues me the most out of those other three.
Yeah, one quick thing I'll say about Waldron before we have to get to our last segment here is I feel most confident about him building like a defensive staff or building a really good staff than the other two, because if you look if you look out there in Seattle, I mean, for instance, I think their pass game specialist and defensive back coach is Sean Desai, who was the defense coordinator for the Bears last season, who was a really good defense coordinator. It's just, he got lost in that Matt Nagy firing and all that stuff. And I think he could grab some really good candidates there from Seattle and his experience with Sean McVay with the Rams, because who knows what's going on with the Rams after the season if McVay retires and stuff like that. Waldron might be able to take some of those coordinators with him as well. So, I mean, I think he could build a really good staff. So, yeah, I think Waldron is a name that is very, very underrated. I don't know if he's going to get his shot this offseason, but he's a guy who I would definitely like to see get a shot, maybe even more so than like a Kellen Moore or Mike Kafka, because I think he's done a lot this year that kind of shows, he's an innovative offensive mind that kind of knows what he's doing there in Seattle.
I think that's a good point that you mentioned with the staff, because honestly, It's something that a lot of people don't talk about, but it's kind of a big critical part in hiring your next head coach, and whether or not you're going to pick a certain guy is who is the group they're bringing along with them. You have the connections with the Pete Carroll tree and the Sean McVay tree, which basically means you have connections on every team right now. So shoot, that could be a scary one to watch. And if the Colts are going to cast this wide net, then there's no stone that could be unturned. Maybe Waldron does have his best shot with the Colts. But before we move on to talk about some of these defensive candidates, which there are a few good ones, we want to tell you about one of our sponsors, Total Wine & More. This holiday season, find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from, it's easy to find a new favorite Cabernet or Chardonnay, or the perfect gifts for everyone on your list with some help from a friendly guide. I'm not a big wine person, more bourbon and beer. They got that as well. Great selections. And all of that with the confidence of knowing that you found something special for the lowest price. Love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. And Zach, drink responsibly, be 21.
Be 21. I wish I go back.
I know you love that one.
I know. I'm a little older now.
No, I think I'm okay on that, personally. Looking at some of these defensive-minded head coaches, though, the belle of the ball, I would think, I know in your eyes, the apple of your eyes, is 49ers defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans.
Oh, it's not just the apple of my eyes. He's the apple of everyone's eyes. I mean, if any of these teams that want to go defensive coordinator guy, or I mean, honestly, even if you're not just trying to go defensive coordinator guy, I mean, DeMeco Ryans arguably is the top candidate this cycle. I mean, he is coaching the best defense in all of football. Like, it's not even close that the 49ers have the best defense in football, and they've been dealing with a lot of injuries this season. I know Nick Bosa's missed some time. They've missed some time on the defensive line. They've had a lot of ACL injuries in their secondary, but it just keeps going, man. This defense keeps making plays. They keep holding opposing offenses to low point totals. I mean, we saw the Miami Dolphins have a juggernaut on offense. DeMeco Ryans has now given teams that blueprint how to beat them. And now look at look at what the Dolphins did this last week against the Chargers defense that is not very good. They kind of struggled because DeMeco Ryans showed that blueprint. DeMeco Ryans, I think if you're looking for rah-rah motivator football guy, that's DeMeco Ryans, former NFL linebacker, just explosive personality, like really fun guy that you can see on the sidelines there, and the players just adore him. And then if you're looking for a schematic guy, that's also DeMeco Ryans. Again, he is drawing. He's kind of just the perfect coordinator for today's NFL with that too high Fangio stuff. He's that guy. He is dominating the scheme right now. He's Vic Fangio with Vic Fangio out of the league. I think he's a great schematic coach. I think he's a great rah-rah coach. His players adore him. And also, again, he can build a really good staff because he's got that Shanahan tree that he's been working with. So, yeah, DeMeco Ryans, I mean, I'd be hard-pressed to say he's not the top candidate this cycle. Again, you can convince me of Shane Steichen and stuff like that too. But, yeah, DeMeco Ryans, he is one heck of a coach, and I think he's going to be a phenomenal head coach wherever he ends up. I mean, unless he ends up with like some cursed franchise, but he is one heck of a head coach. I think he's going to be a great hire for whoever gets him.
Yeah, I would be A-okay with that. He kind of checks all the boxes. I would lean more towards a young offensive guy as well, but he's got that energy. He's a player's coach as well. He's kind of like Nick Sirianni, young guy who the players gravitate toward, but he's going to hold them accountable. He's been very productive as the defensive coordinator. Like you mentioned, revolving door of bodies, still gets productivity out of him. Nick Bosa's having a career year, maybe going to be the defensive player of the year under Ryan. So there's really not much not to like there. Your next guy on the list is an up-and-comer this year for sure. He's kind of in the same situation Gus Bradley is. The Broncos offense is just rough stuff. But the team, the only thing that's kept the team from being just a total just dumpster fire and given them a few wins for the most part is this defense led by Ejiro Evero. Did I say his name right?
I think it's Ejiro Evero, but it could be Evero. I'm not too sure. I think it's Evero.
I was very close.
Yeah, you know what? We'll give it to you. But yeah, no, he's been phenomenal with the Broncos. And it sucks because his defense has kind of fallen off a little bit since their bye week. Which, again, we've seen with Gus Bradley this season, where if your defense is carrying the load all season long, eventually their legs are going to give out. underneath them. But I don't think that we can mitigate just how good a job Evero's done there with the Broncos. I mean, he is, again, a Vic Fangio disciple guy, a Brandon Staley type disciple that is just bringing this aggressive flavor to that type of defense. I was so concerned watching him go to the Broncos and everyone saying like, oh, look, the Broncos are adding Russell Wilson to that great defense they have. And I was like, look, man, they're losing Vic Fangio. That defense is going to take a step back. But with this really young defensive coordinator, they've taken a step forward for the most part. I mean, again, recent weeks, they've gone downhill a little bit, but for the most part, they took that step forward. And he has been just a great for them in the Broncos. And honestly, I do think he's going to get a shot at that head coach job when Hackett gets fired at the end of the season. But besides DeMeco Ryans, he's that young upcomer that you want to keep an eye on there, because I think he's going to get a head coaching job pretty soon.
Yeah, I've heard his name mentioned a lot when I've done interviews with people talking about head coaching stuff. Anything I've watched regarding that, his name always seems to come up. So I'm not going to be shocked at all if he's head coach somewhere. It makes a lot of sense for it to be the Broncos since he's already there. They're probably going to make a switch, but we'll see. The Colts would obviously be wise to kick the tires on that at least.
Yep, and then we got two veteran guys. You only have one here in our little outline, but I want to throw two in here because if Chris Ballard is hiring this next head coach for us, which
I already know who you're going to say.
So Bills defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier is a guy with Colts ties, defensive guy, sturdy head coach, like older head coach. He's been there, done that. He's had a chance at being a head coach. So I could see them seeing the safe option with Leslie Frazier. Again, a guy with those Indy connections. And it's kind of like a throwback to the Tony Dungy era. Leslie Frazier was a part of that era. He's a defensive-minded guy who could probably bring, what if he brings like a Joe Brady or something like that? Then you feel better about that hire. So Leslie Frazier, I think, is going to have a really good shot. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked at all if he is their first interview of the offseason just because of his Indy ties and because, for lack of a better way to explain it, they're going to want to hit that Rooney Rule pretty early, I think. So Leslie Frazier kind of checks a lot of boxes that way. But I do think he's going to have a decent shot. The other one, though, if it's Chris Ballard making this hiring and this guy doesn't get hired in Carolina, Steve Wilks, man, he's got the Chicago ties back to Chris Ballard, and then obviously with Lovie Smith and all that stuff there with Chris Ballard. He's one of those motivator head coaches. I mean, look what he's doing with Carolina this year. I mean, Carolina is one game out of the playoffs, given in the worst division that we've seen in a long time. But he is one game out of the playoffs after they traded Christian McCaffrey. They traded Robbie Anderson. They fired, obviously, Matt Rule and made a lot of other changes. Steve Wilks has come in. He's motivated this bunch of guys to, be one game out of first place in their division. So I do think Steve Wilks is a guy where, again, a Chris Ballard and maybe even Jim Irsay are looking at this entire coaching search that they're about to have. They're going to look for that motivator type. They're going to look for a guy who can kind of bring these guys up, because I think they're going to view the Frank Reich era and the Frank Reich archetype as kind of like a failure. Whether that's right or wrong, I think they're going to try to do the opposite of that. They're going to go for more motivator, defensive guy, just kind of sturdy, explosive presence. And that's kind of what Steve Wilks is. It's, again, what you can kind of see from all the videos that Carolina is releasing and how all the players are responding to him. That seems like the type of guy they're going to go after. So I don't think either of those hires would be very flashy, but I could totally see them going a Steve Wilks or a Leslie Frazier route this offseason.
Yeah, and I think so. We obviously saw, it seemed like the locker room got a little stale, the Colts locker room, or just the message was no longer resonating, because, I mean, of course, Frank is going to try and get a fire lit under these guys. It just didn't happen. They came out looking lifeless all the time. Now, they do have some fiery guys on that team, guys with big personalities, so maybe a coach that kind of reflects that is something that could bring the best out of these guys and keep them rolling and not let things get stagnant. So, I mean, not sexy, not flashy like you mentioned, but could be what's best for them long term.
Yep. And then before we close this out, before I throw it back to you, Jake, here to close out for us again, keep an eye on Jeff Saturday. Keep an eye on Jeff Saturday. Again, with the way that Jim Irsay's been and stuff like that, Jeff Saturday's going to get the majority of chances to take this, to be the guy. And I think if he wins like one or two of these last four games, I think there's a very real shot that he's the head coach next season. So, keep an eye on Jeff Saturday. We can talk all these really fun candidates and stuff like that, but yeah, definitely keep an eye on Jeff Saturday this offseason.
Yeah, I said Jim Harbaugh is probably candidate number one outside. I think the odds-on favorite has got to be Jeff Saturday. Like, if you put a gun to my head and said who's going to be the head coach next year, I'd say it was probably Saturday. He'll definitely be in the mix, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. Anyways, on that note, that is it for us. We'll be back with you guys once again before the game. Since they're going to play on a Saturday, we'll bring you a pregame show. They're going to take on the Vikings out there in Minnesota. We'll break it all down and give you guys our final thoughts. And my dog is going to scream about it.
Yes, guys, we have to talk about a game still. So we will do that. I guess tomorrow we'll talk about some game stuff. But yeah, guys, we are nearing 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. So make sure you guys are going there. Get us to 2,000 by Christmas. That would be an awesome gift to us from you guys. And also, you can follow us on social media at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. Also, subscribe to Locked On Colts wherever you listen to your podcast. And we'd also love just whatever ratings and reviews you guys want to leave for us. We love interacting with you guys. And thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you guys tomorrow.